My new stepdaughter raised her wine glass at my mother's 80th birthday dinner and called me Dad's retirement plan. When I asked her to apologize, my husband laughed, grabbed my wrist, and told me, "She's not your daughter, Evie. Don't correct her." That was the moment something inside me went still. Not broken, not angry, still. And stillness, I would learn, is far more dangerous than rage. We were in a private room at a steakhouse in Carmel, Indiana. I'd spent 3 weeks planning that dinner for my mother, Linda, calling ahead to make sure her walker could get through the entrance, requesting a firm chair, bringing a cushion for her new knee. My sister Carol brought pink roses. My son Daniel drove in straight from work. It should have been a good night. Grant's daughter Madison showed up 40 minutes late in a coat I'd helped pay for, carrying a bag that cost more than my first washing machine. "Sorry, parking was insane," she said. The lot was half empty. I said nothing. I was still trying, in those days, to be a good stepmother. Madison was 21, a junior at Northgate University, and according to Grant, still struggling after his divorce, so I paid. First it was small, a phone bill, a textbook, then tuition, sorority dues, her Jeep payment, a monthly allowance. "You're giving her a real chance," Grant used to tell me. After 12 years as a widow, it felt good to be building something again. Dinner went fine for 20 minutes. Then Daniel asked Madison how school was going, and she looked up from her phone just long enough to say, "College is pretty easy when Dad marries a woman who loves spreadsheets and automatic payments." Grant gave that short laugh people use when they want you to accept cruelty as a joke. Then Madison raised her glass. To Dad, he finally found a retirement plan with excellent credit. No one laughed that time. I asked her to apologize. She refused. And when I pressed, Grant put his hand over my wrist. Not hard, just hard enough to stop me, and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "She's not your daughter, Evie. Don't correct her." I looked at his hand on mine. Then I said quietly, "All right, then I won't be expected to support her like one." He laughed like I was being dramatic. I paid the bill anyway, because my card was already on file. On the drive home, he told me I'd embarrassed him. I told him his daughter had insulted me at my mother's birthday. "She's 21, I said. "She's a kid when it's convenient, and an adult when it isn't." The next morning, I woke at 5:38, with my back on fire, made coffee, and opened 22 months of bank statements. I'd spent my career doing payroll for small businesses. Numbers don't confuse me. What I found did: tuition, the Jeep, insurance, $900 a month in living expenses, and then transfers marked MH Education, nearly $30,000, that hadn't gone to Northgate at all. They'd gone into an account tied to Grant's real estate business. I didn't confront him yet. I just stopped. I canceled the tuition transfer, pulled Madison off my credit card, killed the Jeep payment, and moved my consulting income somewhere he couldn't touch. When Grant found me at the kitchen table with the statements spread out, his anger lasted about 5 seconds, until his eyes landed on the transfers. Then the color left his face. "It's more complicated than that," he said. "Then show me the reserve." He couldn't. He left without breakfast. By mid-morning, Madison called, not about her card being declined, just angry that it was. By noon, she'd posted online about older women who use money to control younger women. By afternoon, Grant's sister was on the phone, telling me I couldn't abandon a child over hurt feelings. I almost caved. Then my son Daniel called, and I snapped at him for being right about Grant from the start. I hung up having hurt the one person actually on my side. The next day, I sat down with Tina at my bank and pulled 22 months of transactions. $84,000 total. Some had gone where Grant claimed. A lot hadn't, routed instead to his brokerage, a loan servicer, an account marked only MB. I thought about the furnace I'd let go another winter, because Madison's education came first. I thought about the physical therapy I'd skipped for the same reason. I thought about his new Lexus in our garage. Tina closed the folder and said, "You need an attorney." 2 days after that, Madison showed up wanting the Jeep keys, titled to her father, of course. "You said Evie had enough money to cover everything," she said to him, and for the first time I watched her really look at Grant, not as her provider, but as someone who'd been using her too. That night, he sent 6 angry texts, calling me destructive. I fired back one line about him stealing from me and lying to his daughter using my dead husband's money. My new attorney, Nathan Kim, told me never to write like that again. Not because I was wrong, but because every true sentence I sent gave him a printable excuse to look like the victim. Nathan and I froze my accounts and started a real review. That's when we found it. A request to add Grant as joint owner on one of my investment accounts. Rejected. The signature didn't match. No money moved. But whoever filled it out had known the exact balance. Only 2 people had ever seen that number, me and my husband. I sat in my driveway a long time after that meeting. 22 years of catching other people's payroll mistakes, and I'd missed the biggest fraud of my own life. Grant became strangely, coldly polite after that, folding towels, warming blankets for my hands, cooking dinner. 2 weeks earlier, I might have believed it meant something. Now it just felt like paperwork in disguise. One night, alone on the phone with my sister Carol at 2 a.m., crying over spilled laundry detergent, I asked her if everyone had seen through Grant except me. No, she said. He wasn't pretending all the time. People like that aren't monsters every minute. If they were, nobody would stay. Then she said the thing I never forgot. Being lonely after losing my first husband, Paul, wasn't a character flaw. Around then, I noticed Grant had started telling a different story. Not to me, to everyone else. A neighbor asked if I was under a lot of stress. A client emailed to make sure I wasn't retiring. None of it sounded alarming alone. Together, it was a pattern. He wasn't just defending himself. He was quietly preparing people not to believe me, using the specter of memory loss, of all things, because he knew exactly how much that word terrifies people our age. A few days later, Madison asked to meet. She showed up at a coffee shop with no makeup, an old sweatshirt, and none of her usual armor. School had sent a notice. Her account wasn't current. She couldn't register. She'd called her father 12 times. He was posting photos from a networking reception instead of fixing anything. Then she pulled out printed emails. One line stopped my heart. Once Evie signs the updated estate plan, we won't have to keep asking permission. An estate plan I'd never agreed to, quietly built to hand Grant control of my business, if I died first. Madison hadn't known any of it was news to me. She'd been told I already knew, that everything was in the family. She'd also been told Daniel was already provided for, which was a lie too. Then she told me the real reason she'd come. The day before, Grant had asked her to sign a statement claiming I'd always known where the money went. She refused. He wouldn't even answer my calls, she said, until he needed something. For the first time, I saw not an entitled kid, but a daughter, realizing she'd been useful before she'd ever been loved. I told her I was still angry, and I meant it, but I was willing to believe she could become someone different. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the first honest sentence she'd ever said to me. Days later, my attorney tracked down Grant's ex-wife, Marlene. She'd kept everything from their marriage, because, she said, Grant had done almost exactly the same thing to her. Some of the money I'd thought was funding Madison's education had actually been servicing Grant's old divorce settlement. My money had been quietly holding his entire past together. Then my longtime client, Arthur Sloan, a man who'd buried his wife after years of Alzheimer's, a man who never rattled easily, called and asked me to come in. He played me a voicemail. Grant's voice, warm and concerned. Evie's getting forgetful. Nothing dangerous yet, but you may want to think about transitioning your payroll before things get complicated. Arthur looked at me and said quietly, "My Eleanor had dementia. I know what it looks like. You don't have it." He handed me a copy of the recording. "You're my payroll manager," he said, "and my friend." That voicemail didn't prove fraud, Nathan told me, but it proved a pattern. A man methodically working to destroy my credibility, right alongside my finances. I filed for legal separation, temporary financial restraints, forensic accounting, full control of my own business. Signed with an ordinary blue pen, no dramatic music, just 22 months of marriage reduced to paperwork. Grant tried one more play. Flowers on the counter, chicken parmesan, a warm towel for my aching hands. For a few dangerous days, I almost let myself believe it. Then one evening he pulled out refinancing paperwork. Collateral. My house, the one I'd owned years before I met him, meant to cover his business debt and Madison's tuition in one stroke. When I pushed back, he said the 6 words that finally, completely ended it. Paul would have helped you. He used my dead husband's name to sell me his debt. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor, picked up the roses he'd brought that morning, and dropped them straight in the trash. The following Friday was the Central Indiana Business Leadership Award luncheon, an event Grant had spent months anticipating, expecting me to stand beside him as living proof nothing was wrong. My attorney had one instruction: you're not going there to destroy him, you're going there to stop protecting him. I wore my late husband's pearl earrings and let my son drive me downtown. 200 people filled the ballroom: bankers, business owners, people who'd trusted me with their payroll for years. Grant greeted me with a kiss for the cameras and a whisper, "Smile, so everyone knows you overreacted." When I was invited up to introduce the award, I didn't talk about him at all. I talked about the truth, that I'd stopped voluntarily supporting expenses that weren't mine to support, that I'd discovered unauthorized activity on an investment account under review, that I'd filed for legal separation. "I'm no longer willing to lend my name to that story," I said, and stepped away from the microphone. Grant grabbed it immediately, laughing it off, mentioning my mother's health, suggesting confusion sometimes looks like certainty. For one terrible second, I thought it had worked. Then Arthur Sloan stood up. Slowly, without asking for the microphone, he held up his phone and played the voicemail for the entire room. 20 seconds. That was all it took. "I've trusted that woman with my payroll for 15 years, he said when it ended. "I trust her today." Then Madison stood, trembling, holding those printed emails, and told 200 strangers that her father had lied to her about an estate plan I'd never signed, about a house and a business that were never going to be hers. "She never agreed," Madison said. "She paid for everything I have, and I never once thanked her for it." The room didn't cheer. It just went quiet, the way rooms do when people realize, together, that they've been lied to. The association president walked up and postponed the award pending review. No verdict, no speech, just consequences. Beginning. The divorce took 11 months. A forensic accountant traced a large share of my savings into Grant's failing development company. I recovered part of it, not all. Attorney fees ate the rest. Justice, it turns out, is expensive. Nobody could ever prove for certain who had submitted that forged investment form, though it traced back to an email account in Grant's office. His biggest development collapsed within the year. He sold the Lexus. He moved into a small apartment. Madison took a semester off, moved in with her mother, worked in a campus bookstore, and signed a repayment plan for what she owed me. Once a month we still get coffee. It started as talk about receipts and budgets. Months later she told me, quietly, "I treated your kindness like proof you were weak." I told her no. It was proof I'd trusted the wrong person. "I won't make that mistake again," she said. "Neither will I." My son helped me repaint the guest room. I finally fixed the furnace I'd let go for 2 winters. My physical therapist joked that my back improved the moment I stopped carrying everyone else's problems. She wasn't wrong. Not long ago, I took my mother away for a quiet weekend. She rubbed her bad knee. I rubbed my aching hands. "Getting older hurts in places you didn't know existed," she laughed. "At least now," I told her. "I'm only paying for my own aches." She squeezed my arm. That's progress. Looking back, the best part of this story was never watching Grant lose an award, a business, or a marriage. It was realizing that kindness doesn't require endless sacrifice, and love was never supposed to cost you your own judgment. If someone has ever mistaken your generosity for an obligation, remember this: setting a boundary might cost you a relationship, but it will save your self-respect. And sometimes, that's exactly where a better life begins.